Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. New York City's early morning fog was lifting as Peter Parker swung across the skyline, his web slinging, reflecting the rhythm of his thought. The chill in the air, which had previously signaled the arrival of autumn, now carried an unnatural charge, an energy that felt more like tension than change in the weather. Something was happening beneath the surface of the city, something big. Reports of strange energy surges had caught Peter's attention over the past few days, and the more he dug into the incidents, the more concerned he became. The surges weren't just random, they were precise, almost surgical. Whatever the source, it wasn't nature, and it wasn't accidental. His destination loomed in the distance, the sharp edges of Stark Tower rising above the city like a beacon. Tony Stark had been unreachable for days off-planet on some urgent mission, leaving Peter to figure things out on his own. Not that he minded, but without the Iron Man to genius or resources, Peter was left relying on his instincts, and his instincts told him something wasn't tight. A flash of light caught his attention, pulling him from his thought. Below him, near the harbor, a small warehouse emitted a pulsing blue glow. It was subtle, but unmistakable, the source of the energy surges. Peter shot a web to the nearest building and swung down, landing softly on the rooftop of the warehouse. His spider sense tingled faintly enough to tell him that he wasn't alone, but not enough to scream danger. With a quick check of his surroundings, Peter slipped through a skylight and dropped quietly into the shadows of the warehouse. The interior was packed with equipment far beyond what one would expect in a typical storage facility. Advanced machinery, computer terminals, and glowing, humming generators filled the space. And standing at the center of it all was a tall man in a long white lab coat, his back turned to Peter as he adjusted some kind of control panel. Dr. Elias Marx, the man at the heart of the mystery. His name had come up in Peter's research, a brilliant scientist with a reputation for pushing the boundaries of ethical science. Marcus had been out of the spotlight for years, working on who knew what now. It seemed Peter had found the answer. Carefully, Peter inched closer, staying in the shadows, as he observed Marcus at work. The man moved with a precision that suggested years of experience, his hands deftly manipulating the controls in front of him. Whatever he was doing, it was no amateur experiment. Before Peter could get any closer, a voice cut through the silence. "You can come out, Spider-Man. I know you're there." Peter froze, his mind racing. He hadn't made a sound, or at least he didn't. How had Marx known he was there? "I sensed you the moment you entered the building." However, Marx continued, his voice calm, almost pleasant. "Your energy signature is unique, after all." With no point in hiding, Peter stepped out of the shadows and faced the scientist's Tourette's energy signature. That is a new one. Marx turned to face him, a small smile on his lips. "So I've been studying gamma radiation and other forms of energy for years, Spider-Man. Your particular enhancements give off a distinct signal, one that I've become quite familiar with. But I'm guessing you didn't come here to hear about that? You want to know about my project?" Peter kept his posture relaxed, but his mind was alert, ready for anything. "Projects, you mean the energy surges you've been causing all over the city? Yeah, I am kind of curious about that." Marx's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Here, I know what I'm doing here is beyond the comprehension of most people, even someone as gifted as yourself. But I'll explain, since you were already here. I've developed a machine, one that can control gamma energy in ways no one thought possible. And with it, I've perfected a method to help your friend Bruce Banner." The mention of Banner's name made Peter's chest tighten. What does this have to do with Banner?" Mark stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and arrogance. "Bruce Banner has been tormented by the Hulk for years, unable to control the transformation fully. My invention can change that. With my technology, Banner can control his transformations perfectly. He can stay in his human form, or become the Hulk whenever he chooses. No more accidents, no more danger to those around him." Peter's skepticism flared. "You were saying you can control the Hulk? That's a pretty big claim, Tech." "I'm not claiming anything, Spider-Man. I am offering a solution." Peter crossed his arms, feeling the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. Banner had struggled with the Hulk for as long as Peter had known him, and the idea of a cure, or at least a way to control the monster within him, was tempting. But something about Marcus O'Laffer felt off. The man was too confident, too sure of himself. Peter had seen that kind of certainty before, and it rarely led to anything good. "Was that the catch?" Peter asked, narrowing his eyes. There's always a catch with stuff like this." Marx's expression did change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something darker. "The catch, if you want to call it that, is that Bruce Banner would have to make a choice. If he uses my machine, he will remain in his Hulk form permanently. No more Banner, just the Hulk, but with full control of his mind and action." Peter's heart skipped a beat. Banner stuck as the Hulk forever. That didn't sound like a solution. It sounded like a prison. "That's not a choice," Peter said, his voice tightening. "Tried that said trap." Marx raised an eyebrow. "A trap? Hardly. It's a solution to a problem that has plagued him for years. Wouldn't you want to be free of the monster inside you if you had the chance?" Peter shook his head. "Banner's not just the Hulk. He's a brilliant scientist, a good man. You were asking him to give up everything that makes him who he is, and in return, he gains freedom?" Marx countered. "True freedom, not just from the Hulk, but from the fear of losing control. Isn't that worth the sacrifice?" Peter stared at Marx, his mind racing. There was something more to this. Something Marx wasn't saying. "Why are you doing this? What's else in it for you?" Marx's smile faltered for a moment, then returned, colder than before. "I am a scientist, Spider-Man. I seek progress, innovation. What I am doing here could revolutionize the world, could unlock the potential of gamma energy for all of humanity. But to do that, I need someone like Bruce Banner, someone who can handle the power of the Hulk." Peter's spider sense tingled again, stronger this time. Marx wasn't just interested in helping Banner. He wanted to use him to harness the Hulk's power for his own purposes. Whatever Marx was planning, it wasn't too good. "I am not letting you turn Banner into your personal science experiment," Peter said, his voice firm. Marx's eyes flashed with anger. "Banner is already on his way here. He contacted me days ago. He wants this." Peter's stomach dropped. If Banner was walking into this willingly, it was going to be harder to stop him than he thought. "I won. To let you do this?" Peter repeated, his clenching. Marx's smile vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "We'll see about that." Before Peter could react, Marx pressed a button on his control panel, and the machinery in the warehouse roared to life. The humming generators kicked into overdrive, and the room was flooded with a bright, pulsing light. Peter's spider sense exploded into overdrive as he leaped into action, firing webs at the nearest control panel. But before he could disable it, the air around him crackled with energy, and he was thrown backward, crashing into a stack of crates. Too late, Spider-Man got over the noise. The process has already begun. Peter struggled to his feet, his body aching from the impact. He had to stop this before it was too late, but how Marx had set everything in motion, and Banner was walking right into the trap. In the distance, Peter heard the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. His heart sank as the door to the warehouse creaked open, revealing a familiar figure. Bruce Banner stood in the doorway, his expression grim, his eyes already glowing with the telltale green of the Hulk. "Bruce, wait," Peter shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the roar of the machinery and the rising energy in the room. Banner stepped forward, his body already starting to transform. The muscles in his arms bulged, his skin taking on a greenish hue as the Hulk emerged. But this time there was no anger in his eyes, no wild, uncontrollable fury. Instead, there was a look of calm, of acceptance. "I know what I'm doing, Peter," Banner said, his voice deepening as the Hulk's growl merged with his words. "This is the only way." Peter shook his head, his mind racing. "It's not Bruce. Marx is using you." But Banner wasn't listening. He stepped into the center of the room where Marx's machine waited, its lights flickering with anticipation. "Bruce Don, Peter yelled, but it was too late. Banner stepped into the machine, and the machine roared to life. The whole warehouse seemed to vibrate as the power surged through the wires and into the central device. Spider-Man watched helplessly as Bruce Banner, now fully transformed into the Hulk, stood inside the glowing apparatus, his massive frame bathed in the eerie green light of the gamma energy. Peter's mind raced, his instincts telling him to move, to act. But he couldn't. Not yet. One wrong move, and it could set everything off, and that might be the last chance Bruce had. Above the noise, Peter could just make out Dr. Mark's voice. The scientist had moved to a separate control panel, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. The grin on his face was unmistakable, now a mixture of triumph and greed. "You will thank me for this, Banner," Mark said, his voice barely audible over the machinery. "Derry gal, when you see what I can offer you." But Peter knew better. This wasn't really about helping Bruce. This was about control, about power. Marx didn't want to cure Banner, he wanted to weaponize him. The Hulk let out a low growl, his massive fists tightening around the handles of the machine. His muscles flexed, bulging with raw power as the gamma energy swirled around him. For a brief moment, Peter caught a glimpse of Bruce's face beneath the monster. The calm determination he'd seen earlier was still there, but now it was mingled with pain. This wasn't just a decision for Banner. It was a sacrifice. Peter's spider sense flared, sharper than ever. Marx was up to something more dangerous than even he had anticipated. The energy in the room spiked, and Peter barely had time to react before Marx made his move. The scientist pressed a final button on the console, and the entire lab erupted into chaos. The machine encasing the Hulk exploded in a blaze of green light, sending shockwaves through the building. Peter instinctively dove for cover, webbing himself to the nearest wall as debris rained down around him. The force of the explosion knocked over equipment, shattered windows, and sent machinery flying in every direction. For a moment, the world was nothing but noise and light, a violent storm of gamma energy and raw power. When the dust settled, Peter peeled himself from the wall and surveyed the damage. The warehouse was in ruins, the central machine now a smoking pile of twisted metal. And at the center of it all, standing amidst the wreckage, was the Hulk. But something was different. The Hulk's usual posture, hunched and ready for a fight, had shifted. He stood tall, his massive shoulders relaxed, his eyes calm, almost too calm. Peter could sense it immediately. The Hulk wasn't angry. There was no rage, no destruction. This was a new kind of Hulk, one that Bruce Banner had complete control over, or at least that's what it looked like. Banner, or rather, the Hulk turned slowly to face Marx, who was standing at the far end of the room, grinning like a madman. "It worked," Marx whispered, his voice filled with awe. It actually worked. The Hulk's eyes narrowed. "You used me," he rumbled, his voice a deep, earth-shaking growl. But unlike before, the words were clear, deliberate. This was Banner speaking, not the mindless rage of the Hulk. "You didn't tell me the full cost." Mark's grin faltered. "I gave you what you wanted, Banner control. Power, the ability to decide your own fate. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" Banner's eyes blazed with anger, but it was a controlled anger. "You lied," he growled. "You didn't tell me I'd be stuck like this forever, Spider-Man leaped down from his perch, landing softly between the two. "Bruce, we can fix this," Peter said, his voice calm but urgent. "You don't have to do this." Banner glanced at Peter, the conflict evident on his massive green face. He wanted to believe Peter, but the temptation was strong. The power coursing through his veins felt right. For the first time in his life, he was the Hulk, but he wasn't a slave to his rage. He was in control, but at what cost? Marx took a step forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Banner, listen to me, you've always feared the Hulk, but now you can be the Hulk without losing yourself. Isn't that worth it? Isn't that what you wanted all along?" The Hulk's fists clenched, and for a moment, Peter thought he might attack. But instead, Banner took a slow, deliberate breath, a breath that Peter recognized. It was the kind of breath that someone took when they were about to make a decision they couldn't come back from. "I want to be your weapon," the Hulk said, his voice low and dangerous. "Sorry, I won. You used me." Before Marx could respond, the Hulk lunged forward, his massive hand closing around Marx's control panel. With a single powerful motion, he ripped the machine from the floor and crushed it in his fist, sparks flying as the circuit shorted out. Marx's face twisted with rage. "You fool," he screamed, his calm veneer finally cracking. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed the only way to control the gamma energy. Without that machine, you will be the Hulk forever." For a moment, there was silence. Even Peter felt the weight of Mark's word. Banner had made his choice, but now he would have to live with it. The Hulk stood tall, his gaze steady as he looked at Mark's steer. I'd rather live as the Hulk than be controlled by you. Mark's eyes blazed with fury. You think this is over? I still have to. Before he could finish, Spider-Man shot a web at Mark's hand, yanking a small device from his grip. Mark let out a cry of frustration as Peter caught the device and crushed it in his hand. No more tricks, Peter said, his voice firm. Sour and corner excited. Mark staggered back, his face pale. You don't understand. Pray, he whispered, his voice trembling with fear. You've doomed him without my control, Banner. We'll never be able to change back. The Hulk let out a deep, rumbling growl, but there was no anger in his eyes, only acceptance. Maybe I'll never be Banner again, he said slowly. Inagema, still me, and I am not your weapon. Peter felt a surge of respect for his friend Bruce, had made the hardest decision of his life to live as the Hulk, fully aware of what that meant. But he had made the choice on his own terms, not as a pawn in someone else's game. As Marx backed away, defeated, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Peter turned to the Hulk, his heart heavy. Prior Bruce, I am sorry. The Hulk shook his head. John T.B. Peter, this was my choice, and I live with it. For a moment, the two stood in silence, the weight of everything that had happened settling around them. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a soft light over the ruined warehouse. It felt like the end of something, but also the beginning of something new. As the sirens grew closer, Peter gave the Hulk a small nod. Sarah, you did the right thing, Bruce. The Hulk's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Hi, thanks, Peter. With that, Peter shot a web to the nearest building and swung away, leaving the Hulk to face the consequences of his decision. As he soared above the city, Peter couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotion. Banner was the Hulk now, maybe forever, but he was also free in a way. Free from the fear, the rage, the constant struggle for control. And for Bruce Banner, maybe that was enough.